Hello and welcome to episode 74 and 75 Tech Wars How Semiconductors Shape Geopolitical Landscape. On this podcast, we previously had several guests who spoke about the geopolitical aspect, the international relations, and the kind of impact, the kind of, I would say, rivalries it can create on a diplomatic level as well. But we didn't really had a mixture of the technology side and how the semiconductors especially impacts this side of the politics. So today, to take a deep dive into this topic, we have with us Megha Shrivastava. Hi, Megha. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megha. And yeah, thank you very much again for taking out the precious time and providing insights on this topic because we never really discussed about semiconductors as such. We have discussed about critical minerals with one of the guests from CAPS, but we never really took a deep dive into the semiconductors as such. So yeah, looking forward to engage in the discussion with you now. But prior to taking a deep dive into the topic itself, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself? Like, how did you started? What is your journey? The kind of academic background you have, and how did you basically end up doing what you're doing at the moment? That is, currently you're a doctoral researcher. So, can you give us a brief background about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's indeed my pleasure. I'm currently pursuing my PhD and I'm a Dr. TMFI Fellow at Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, India. I started my PhD, before that, I did my master's from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. After that, I started my PhD in China's Information and Communications Technology Development, where I particularly look at the semiconductor industry. It is one of my focus areas in my thesis. And by the time I started around 2021, the conflict between US and China intensified in the technology domain. So I started looking into it, and I started taking interest in the chip segment, which has become the focus of the rivalry. So this is how I got into the technology part.
Interesting. So yeah, I think that's a good I think example that you have provided that due to some the events that are happening that has basically kind of urged you or inspired you to basically take up this research. So yeah, coming to the actual topic itself. So from a basic perspective, because I have a very much diverse set of audience from the space technology, defense industry, security as well. So from that perspective, this question I'm framing right now: what makes semiconductors so crucial in today's global technology landscape?
Sure. Since you earlier highlighted that we are in this podcast are focusing on technology, I would first like to talk about what semiconductors are. So
Yeah,
these
sure.
are tiny electronic components. These are that relies on electronic properties of materials like silicon, germanium, or even gallium. These materials actually exhibits properties between conductors and insulators. So, and that's why these are called semiconductors. So these are manufactured as both discrete devices and also integrated circuits, which we call chips. Basically, in the history or evolution of computer hardware technology, they have replaced the earlier vacuum tubes, which were earlier used in, maybe you have heard or people have heard in computers earlier in the 1960s or 70s. So uh, these contains millions of transistors installed on a single wafer. This also denotes that the processing capacity of a chip. Uh, this also denotes the processing capacity as more transistors on a single chip means more advanced the processor is. As the technology has developed over time, the size of this wafer is reducing, and the distance between two transistors, what we call the nanometer size, it is also reducing, and that represents that the technology is advancing, and the processing capacity of particular chip increases. That is if we have a 5 nm chip and if we have an 11 nm chip, 5 nm chip is much more advanced than an 11 nm chip. So this advancement in hardware technology is particularly important in the current age we can say, the fourth industrial revolution or the digital revolution, characterized by emerging technologies or Internet of Things, or more vitally, if I can say, the age of artificial intelligence. Uh, these integrated circuits have been used traditionally in various electronic devices, from washing machines to a computer. The requirement of advanced semiconductors is rapidly rising due to these revolutions. So they are becoming crucial drivers of modern day innovation. We can see the example of today's buzzword called ChatGPT. The making of this
Yes.
particular application requires large amount of data modeling, which needs most advanced kind of GPUs. GPUs are graphic processing units. We know this huge company Nvidia, which produces most of the GPUs.
Yeah.
So first, the importance is rising due to the new age of technology applications that are coming up in recent years, and it is here to even rise further. Secondly, I think the term has become more common to our ears in recent 5 to 6 years. I would say before that it was mostly relevant in IT or manufacturing business. A pivotal moment that we witnessed, I would say, is the COVID-19 period, when these disruptions highlighted the supply chain vulnerabilities. While traditionally the industry has embraced specialization based on the region, recently all players have been focusing on resilience from supply side shocks, which they experienced during the COVID-19 period. So now they are vouching for self-reliance or self-independent value chains. So yes, a wave of domestic capability has risen in recent years, and now countries are investing in their domestic in building a domestic supply chain. So this has made chips crucial to national governments and their industrial policies. Third, I think when chips are becoming essential drivers of innovation, they also remain vital to a country's technological prowess, or if I can say, technological supremacy. This is where geopolitics come into the picture. A control on the production of semiconductors is increasingly seen as a means to secure economic and technological sovereignty of countries. So the current US-China rivalry is the most prominent example of this. That US sanctions on China's semiconductor industry indicates that these microelectronic devices are crucial in enhancing in a nation's AI capability or even military modernization. So since US cannot risk either of them, hence it is focusing on cutting edge access to advanced chips to China.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's an interesting bit you mentioned about, the technical background as well, because I think we haven't really discussed about this. So yeah, thank you very much for providing these insights as well. And as on the podcast, we also deal with the national security issues too. So I'd like to ask you, how does the semiconductor industry basically impact national security for major powers?
Sure. So largely it is due to the dual use feature of the semiconductors that they are crucial in driving today's military modernization programs.
Yeah.
Basically, when we have more advanced chips, it is equals to having more advanced computing capabilities. If you have more advanced computing capabilities, it means you can generate or create more advanced software systems that will deliver higher level of precision. Now, how militaries can use this level of precision is by, for example, in their missile guidance systems or their communication radars or their surveillance system or their guided munitions or even critical infrastructure for that matter. Semiconductors are essential for running data centers, which are critical to governments and have connected to, and here it is connected to the cyber security domain as well. So if there's a breach of a cloud system, that can have serious national security implications. So this is also the reason that US is largely focusing on chips because there's an insecurity in US that due to China's AI development strategy that has unfolded in recent years, in the last decade. So there was this China threat perception coming in more and more into the picture. Also, we can see the Made in China Plan 2025, wherein China aims to informatize its manufacturing process or use more and more technology-led manufacturing development. So that has fueled competition over chips. US thinks that a higher edge on China's side will bolster its technology modernization program, and it will undermine the current dominance that the US has. In simple terms, if China has advanced chips, it can build advanced military weapons and weapons systems. So if China gains an edge over US, it directly affects its military superiority. So for these reasons, I believe military is an important, or military modernization program, or the importance of semiconductors in this domain is crucial, that it is becoming a tool for geopolitical competition as well.
Okay. And as you mentioned about the China, so I'd like to actually come to this point that, I mean, this is just out of curiosity. How have semiconductors basically become a focal point in the US-China tech rivalry? Because we have seen in Taiwan also, there is a quite a lot of evacuation that US is conducting for the China, for the Taiwanese scientists, and also from that perspective, has semiconductors been a focal point right now at the moment between the rivalries?
Sure, you're absolutely right. Um, of course, I would say it did not start out of the blue. Rather, I think it's a final blow culminated after a decade-long competition between the US and China. I would say
Okay.
there is no particular point when this started. In fact, it maybe the rivalry itself, the scrutiny against Chinese involvement in latest technologies, this started early in 2010 or afterwards. But particularly when chip came first into focus, uh, it was when Huawei and ZTE were banned. It was in around 2017 and 2018. In 2018, Huawei was banned. So we see this anti-China or China threat perception largely started coming up during the Trump administration, when this confrontational approach was adopted by Trump. But as we transition towards the Biden administration, we see a larger focus on the semiconductor chips. So this is how Biden has focused on a segment which he would know that, okay, this is the point where I can directly hit an industry or a hardware which is crucial to everything technology is related to. As I said, that semiconductor is something which is used in every other electronic device, be it a basic electronic device that you might have around you, or military systems. So they have focused on a hardware which is crucial to everything. So the idea is to leave China way behind, that it is not able to catch up with the US. So
Okay.
the term that the US foreign policy or policymakers uses to keep a large lead as possible, as large lead as possible. So they say that the difference from 10 years ago from now, and currently it has changed. Currently, the geopolitical situations are intense, and China is rising fast in its technology development, and we need to make a distance. So the policy that the Biden administration has adopted is the small yard hyphen strategy. Uh, I would focus on what is this small yard and hyphen. When it comes to keeping the yard small, it means narrowing the scope of these restrictions to ensure targeted and effective implementation of the policies that the US is bringing up. So chip exports are designed by the US to cover certain advanced chips and equipments and expertise that are needed to make them. That is 7nm and below. US foreign policy has said that, okay, there are some technologies which are force multipliers, and they have quoted semiconductors as one among them. So they focus on particular Chinese companies which are involved in military intelligence or security. These companies are largely in strategically important industries like semiconductors or AI, or defense and surveillance technology. When it comes to defining that how high this fence is, uh, it's about how US plans to implement the export controls. The US is using a wide range of authorities to restrict China's access to certain technologies that often levine, multiple types of restrictions on the same set of technology. So there are four kinds of restrictions basically that the US has come up with. First is export control. We have seen in 2022 and 2023 October, twice these kind of export controls have come, wherein the 7 nm and below chips have been banned from like the flow of technology, this particular technology has been banned from the US to China and also its allies. Secondly, there are some kind of financial sanctions as well. As we see in 2021, yes, 2021, US created this new list called NSCMIC list, which is non-specially designated national Chinese military industrial complexes. It is a complicated name. So this
Hey,
prohibits
yeah.
US persons from purchasing or selling the publicly traded securities of companies which are determined by the government to be involved in China's defense, military, or surveillance technology sector. So there are 68 such Chinese companies that have been banned. The other two restrictions are about uh, screening of investment, both inbound investment and outbound restrictions. Sorry, investments. So the importance of IT hardware in this US China tech war, which is called, is rising, and that can be seen as a prominent tool to derail China's whole AI development strategy. So previously, we have seen it in case of Japan in the 1980s when US when the semiconductor industry of Japan was advancing. But yes, that
Interesting.
but then also US felt that okay, they are trying to surpass us, so let's restrict them. But back then it did not evolve into this the kind of a situation like tech war. So there was an agreement signed between the US and Japan, and it was resolved. But today it has much more wider implications, I would say.
Interesting. And I think you mentioned briefly about the export control regime. So I would actually like to touch upon that part again because I think it's very important from every aspect because without that, you can't basically move the, electronic goods or any other, I would say goods which are uh, basically allocated in the defense domain and the security related stuff as well. So, how do export controls and sanctions impact in general? I'm not talking in general about just the US China thing, but in general, how does these things basically affect the global semiconductors market?
Sure, the recent disruptions caused by the export control measures, they have created a widespread turmoil in the global industry. We have major players in the industry. I can name them: Japan, where that specializes in raw materials and gases when it comes to manufacturing process. There are South Korean companies like SK Hynix and Samsung, which are specializing as integrated device manufacturers. There's China that specializes in mainly assembly, testing, and packaging. They also have some well-known foundries. US is mainly known for designing, but they also have some sort of contribution in the foundry business. So when it comes to businesses by all these leading companies, if I first talk about figures, all these companies have faced declining figures. On an average, 5 to 8% reduction from 2021 has been faced by all these countries, including Taiwanese companies. Also, there's a wider in mm, dependence of Taiwanese and Chinese semiconductor countries or sorry industries on each other. So after these restrictions, there has to be there was a reversal from China to Taiwan. So the Taiwanese workers who were working in China, they have also faced the heat. There has been rise in demand also of high-end chips because they were in short supply. So once you face the demand supply crunch, then inflation will go on rise and it will lead to economic slowdown, particularly in these industries. So that also seeks to reshape how global value chain has been there in place for decades. But now we see there are a lot of investments coming up and a lot of new actors are being seen in this scenario. For example, India is vouching for their own semiconductor industry, also Vietnam or Malaysia. So these new players seem to be coming up. At least what they are voting. I'm not saying that it is it is they are bound to come into the picture. Maybe it will take some years or generations to uh, see the light of the day. So the widespread impact, as we have seen, is also their relations with China, because all these countries, Japan and South Korea, they are intricately linked when it comes to Chinese market. Uh, for talent, for investments, for revenues of their own companies, they are tightly integrated with Chinese semiconductor industry. So once their business is restricted by the US policies, they have to face the heat. So governments are also here, are finding themselves in a dilemmatic situation. They are in dilemma that whether to face the US sanctions, adhere to them, or to take this as an opportunity to diversify away from China, reduce their reliance on China, or to let their businesses suffer due to revenue losses. Uh, but yes, more than strategic, the disruptions have impacted the consumers and businesses, at least as for now. I would say that this industry is becoming more important today, which have been neglected for years. We have never seen these kinds of unprecedented level of investments in these sector before.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a very deep perspective. You gave the perspective on the consumer market as well, and how the business are affected. So I think the whole situation is very interesting. I think some people are confused, maybe on some of the side, the decision making is kind of hampering due to the kind of international relations that are happening. So from that perspective, because this there are some countries which are also in this race. So how countries like primarily US, China, I think you already mentioned, but Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea are also positioning themselves in the semiconductor race. I know India is also coming up in that race, but still I think these are the prime players, I think, from a global perspective. So what are your thoughts on this?
Surely, see, if I can give this a term, this is horizontal diversification. That now more
Okay.
players are coming up, and it is kind of expanding. And
Yes.
these countries are seen as avenues, or if I can say, alternatives to China. This is what, in some way or the other, India is trying to portray, that yes, we have cheap labor. We also have skilled talent, especially in the design segment. So we can emerge as something called Chinese alternatives. But in my opinion, I doubt that, the kind of competitive advantage in terms of skilled talent, in terms of cost, in terms of ease of doing a business, which has been facilitated, or the Chinese have expertise in. Uh, it is difficult to replicate that overnight. It took generations for this
Absolutely.
particular industry to shape this way. And
Yes.
I don't think even within 5 years we can change the whole scenario in favor of other countries. So I would say, I don't know how far these Chinese alternatives better than China itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you on this point that we can't change things overnight. But there is of course a narrative going on in the market that I think will be kind of doing things and becoming successful. But I think each and everything, when you start it from the scratch, there are some trials, there are some experiments, there are some failures that we might be facing. But yeah, overall, I believe okay, it's kind of impossible to scale very quickly and efficiently. So I think it's definitely going to take time. And coming to the prime actually player in the market that we see. So what role do semiconductor foundries like TSMC play in global geopolitics?
Yeah, on point, I would say. Yes, see, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, is one of the most important players for several reasons. It also indicates that why semiconductors are at or crucial in geopolitics. It is one of the biggest examples why it is the focal point. So it is TSMC, I would say it is a pure play foundry. It means it only manufactures chips without designing them. So it is the client of major designing firms like Qualcomm and Intel and others. So and also Nvidia. So its chip fabrication capabilities are the most advanced in the world. Most advanced processors they build, and for example, the most advanced phones that we have from iPhones and others, nothing they are fabricated by TSMC. So it manufactures over around 90% of the world's most advanced chips and covers around 50% of the global front-end manufacturing market. In short, TSMC has an unparalleled advantage and capability that neither Chinese nor the American company has. Now, this is a very important point that the company itself is formidable, and these two players, which are I would say fighting with each other or racing against each other, they do not have something that Taiwan has. Interesting point is that there is a geopolitical dynamics associated between China, Taiwan, and the US. So there's a widely understood geopolitical conflict that China claims over Taiwan, and US's support to Taiwan is something that enhances the importance of the company. If in case there's a possible future escalation of tensions between China and Taiwan, it can also be said that escalating tensions in Taiwan space pose existential risk to TSMC as well. So this particular company is also has also its own vulnerabilities in the global supply chain this way, and they are also looking forward towards diversification. So the incapability of both the US and China to replicate the fabrication capability of TSMC and the continued reliance on TSMC, it makes this company an important factor that affects the US China dynamics, and it is here to affect till the time there's a significant event. So the United States view TSMC as a critical partner for both commercial and national security reasons. Due to China's claims over Taiwan and the potential for military conflict, US has recently begun to take steps to reduce its dependency on Taiwan also. For example, not recently, I guess 3 years back, it started during Trump and it took shape during Biden administration when this new factory came up in Arizona in the Phoenix City. It was built by the TSMC. It's fab they have diversified in the US instead of China. So far they have their factories in China, but now they have their factories in Arizona, US also. So this move not only diversifies TSMC's manufacturing base, but also aligns with the US interests that aims to mitigate supply chain vulnerabilities. On the other side, if you look at China, we see China expressing its aspirations for semiconductor self-sufficiency. It recognizes its reliance on foreign entities like TSMC as a strategic vulnerability. So this is why a massive attempt is underway to make Chinese foundries self-sufficient. They're investing a lot. I guess last month in May only, they introduced the third phase of the big fund. That's a different debate whether it is possible or not, whether they can turn self-sufficient or not. So having said that, what comes more often to my mind, signifying TSMC's importance, is the term silicon shield associated with everything what I've said. That it suggests the notion that global reliance on Taiwan's semiconductor industry can act as a deterrent against a political aggression in case of a war scenario, and also that if there's a war, US is more likely to intervene due to its reliance on TSMC. So the most important factor is that TSMC acts as a deterrent against any future aggression that Taiwan could face. So I think this is the core point why TSMC is at the center of this conflict.